Hello and welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we're going to be enhancing our little typing box to make a selection box out of it. So as you can see, we still have this typewriter system where it types out the text and does what it needs to do, but we also have these buttons here. And this is a 4-part selection box, so we have yes, no, and then we also have options for 2 more buttons down here if we need them. So this makes it an omni system that works for dialogue, and it works for selections, it works for move selections, and it works for yes, no's. So we're going to go ahead and modify our typing box to do that today. So if you remember, this is our little box here. And all we have in here is just text that does a typewriter theme. So I'm going to open up this widget from my dialog box. And we're going to get started here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this size box with a vertical box. And I'm going to wrap that vertical box with a border. And this is to give it a little bit of style. The brush on that border is going to be rounded box with a corner radius of 16, 4, 4, 16, not 44, 4, and an outline of whitish gray, where the box itself is going to be that kind of semi-transparent dark tint. Okay? Now that we have that, we're going to go into our vertical box. We're going to make sure that this is fill. It is. I'm going to give this padding of 10. I'm going to take our size box here. Our size box is going to be auto. I didn't change any of the padding settings or any of the size settings with this size box. And the next button and the text inside of the next button did not change either. The only thing we did in here was wrap this text with a vertical box. And inside of that vertical box, we added in another border and another text element. Whoop. And move that up. This border is going to be drawn as a border. And this just gives us a little title up there. I did one on the right, one on the bottom. This is just so that we have a little title section to work with. And then I added a little spacer in there as well. That way we just have a tiny bit of space coming off of that title. And make sure both of these are still set to auto. And that should be good for now. We're going to add another spacer in here. Into this vertical box that our size box is wrapped with. So right underneath the size box, we're going to add another spacer. I'm also going to give that 10. And then inside of here, we're going to add another vertical box for the options. This is going to contain a horizontal box. And this horizontal box is going to contain 2 buttons and a spacer. Make a button. And that button is going to have some text. And we do want to copy the style of our original button here. So I'm going to come over to style, I'm going to right click, I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go into this button and I'm going to paste in the style. I'm going to take this button, I'm going to set this button to fill. And then I'm going to duplicate it. So I have another button in here. And then I'm going to add a spacer in between those buttons. Just so we have a little bit of space coming off of them. Whoops. Wanted that on the X. Can't exactly see with my microphone in front of me. And then I'm just going to duplicate this horizontal box. And I'm going to drag this spacer into this vertical box right in between those two. That's not what I wanted. Right in between those 2 containers of buttons. This one's going to be button option 1, button option 2. I'm going to open up this one, button option 3, option 4. So now that we have all of our button options, we can see that this is kind of not exactly how we want it, right? So we need to take this border element up here and honestly make this a little bit bigger. That way it kind of fits the whole dialog box. And we need to adjust the settings on this border a little bit because it's not quite looking the way I want it to look. So we did rounded box. We need the width to be 5. Fixed radius. And so that's already looking a lot better. To me anyway. You're going to have to come in here and fiddle around with the exact cosmetics that you want. But in general, we now have our box to work with here. So it's got all of our title, it's got our text, and it's got all of our options set up in here. So we're going to have to make quite a few changes to the graph in order to actually make this work. So our next button hasn't changed, but instead of doing all of this, I'm actually just going to set its visibility to collapsed here. That way it's just a little bit neater. But otherwise, this has not changed at all. So this is good. I'm just going to comment this so I know it is done and out of the way. Our update text array index as well. I do not believe this changed at all. Let me look it over. It did not change at all, so that's good. I am also going to move this out of the way. So our new text, for the most part, is going to be essentially the same. Instead of trying to do two separate things off of one custom event, I'm actually going to do 2 custom events and have each one of them called separately based on what the needs are. So we need another string here. I've already made it. It's called displayed name. This is just a string. We're just going to route this in here. Add the pin to this new text node and call it title or displayed name, whatever you want. This is going to be that title value. So we're going to come back into the designer. We're going to take this top text block and we're going to bind this to displayed name. That way we have a little bit of text there, so we know what the displayed name is. Otherwise, the rest of this remains pretty much exactly the same. Yeah, otherwise the rest of this typing logic actually also remains exactly the same. So I'm just going to comment that so I know it's done and out of the way. That was the only adjustment we really made to everything else that we already had in this system. And we're pretty much just going to call a new event whenever we need to use the options, right? So we're going to make this custom event called setup options box. Setup options box also needs this displayed name for sender. It also needs this options message array, but this message array we actually called options texts. That way we have a different array to work with. You could probably reuse some of the same arrays, but I wanted to keep this simple. Options. We need current message, because when you have an options box, there's only going to be one message. We're not going to do the typewriter effect. Well, we might do the typewriter effect, but we're not doing multiple different messages when we have options, right? There's only going to be one message that we need to format to fit inside of that dialog box. So we're just going to take that current message and set it through there. And then we need one more value, which is an enumerator called selection type. Now this enumerator is going to be different based on what exactly you need for your game. But this is basically your yes, no. It's just enhanced a little bit. So we're going to call this selection type. And in here, I'm just going to make a few things like quit game. Whoops, if I spell game right. Quit game. Save game. Move. Select. Overwrite game. You're going to have to decide as you're going along what exactly you need, and you're going to need to make an enumerator value in here basically for each different type of selection that you have in your game. So I'm going to add that as an input on this select options box. That way we know whenever we're calling this what exactly this is going to be used for, because we're going to have to pass that to run logic on it. So we're going to promote this to a variable, selection type, and set it. I'm going to route that over here. And we also need to set our current message index to 1. This is just to make sure that we are not doing anything weird with the 0, because again, we only have one message when we are using the options box. We don't have more than one message. We need to take our message array and clear that out. That way we don't get anything weird happening with that either. We're going to take our options text. We're going to run a for each loop. We're going to take this array index and we're going to switch on int. We're going to add 4 pins. Remove this execution on the default. And we're going to need 4 different text values for each of the options. So we're going to promote this to a variable. Call this option 0, duplicate it, option 1, duplicate it, option 2, duplicate it, option 3. And we're going to set all of these. And we're using this instead of set text nodes because we're going to need to basically check which value is which. We don't necessarily need to do this. You could do this off of the array itself, but I thought this way was a little bit easier to understand and manage than trying to figure out where you are at in the array and set things appropriately. We're going to need another custom event called enable options buttons. This takes in a boolean of, you guessed it, enable. After this is completed, we are going to enable options buttons. Pile save that, and refresh that. And then we are going to run type text. But here, there is a reason I did something a little bit different. I made this custom event start typing text. Ran this custom event start typing text into the timer, and then said start typing text. That way this timer has it's kind of its own way to start itself. It doesn't have to start itself on this specific new text event. It can start itself from anywhere. So now the new text event can start it, and I can start it up here. Because if I just type text, it's only going to type the one letter. This also does need to be enabled, by the way. So that's all that's going to happen here. Our enable options box buttons, this is going to be a little bit weird, so try to stick with me here. On this enable, we're going to branch. If this enable is false, we need to take our options texts, clear them. Take all of these different setters that we had. Whoops. So I'm going to Control C on all of those. I'm going to Control V them because these all need to be empty. We need to take all of our buttons for our options. So button option 1. I'm going to Control get that. Control get 2. Control get 3. Control get 4. Set is enabled to false on all of these. So once this last option has been set back to 0. Set enabled to false. Set visibility. I do collapsed here. So we're going to link all of those up into collapsed. And then if you want it to look a little bit better, what I did is I took this vertical box. I called this options container. I made it a variable. So now I can take that options container and I can set its visibility to collapsed as well. That way we don't have a bunch of blank space in there. when we're not using this. It kind of just makes it look a little bit better. You're going to have to decide on your own what exactly you want to do with that. And then I need to set the visibility of the widget itself to visible, because remember, we are collapsing it when we end any kind of logic. We're collapsing this widget. So I know that's a bit of a mess, but that is pretty much what's happening. We're just clearing everything out because this is not an options box. Likewise, inside of our new text sequence here, we need to add this in somewhere. So I'm going to add it in right here. Whoops. Not setup options box, enable options box. Set to disabled. That way those are all collapsed and everything. That is where we're going to be disabling the options box. And that just is kind of a cosmetic thing to make sure that all of this stuff is cleared out, not referenced anywhere, not interfering with our dialog box functionality. So I did kind of mess up these options box. This should technically be option 0, but we named it option 1. Just remember that option 0 is option 1. Kind of something you have to do on your own as well, figure out. But yes, this option 1 is now going to be enabled off of the true branch on our enable options, because this is enabled. It also needs to be visible. Visible. And let's go ahead and do this real quick. We're going to bind option 0 to option 1, bind option 1 to option 2, bind option 3 to option, yeah, you get what I'm saying here, right? Anyway, we're going to bind all of those text values. That way they are in use. And now we need to run logic, because if we have an options box, then we know that option 1, or I should say option 0, is relevant. But that might not be the same for option 2. So for option 2, we need to basically duplicate these. This is what we're going to be doing for every single option. So option 2 is going to be doing this. Option 3 is going to be doing this. And option 4 is going to be doing this. That way, if you don't have options, they are not showing themselves on the screen. And we'll plug this one into option 3. And what we need to do here is take our option text. So for option 1, which is the actual option 2, I really should have thought this out, but we need to check and see if this is empty. And if this is not empty, so we're going to bring out of the return value of is empty and bring out not. We're going to use that to set enabled, and we are going to select our visibility based on this is empty. So if this is false, then it is visible. If this is true, then it is collapsed. So if this is empty, it's going to be collapsed. If it is not empty, it is going to be visible. And we are going to do this for every one of these. So you'll probably want to make a little bit of space, tidy it up. I am trying to avoid making hour-long videos where half of the video is me tidying up the graph, so try to stick with me there. Your option 3 for option 4, and your option 2 for option 3. So now if we don't have options, they are going to collapse themselves and be invisible. If we do have options, they are not going to be collapsed and they are going to be enabled. So we can click on them and do stuff. Now we need to set enabled to false here. This is because we're not going to be clicking. Remember, enabled is for this button up here. Because we're not going to be using that next button for this. We need to take our options container. If you did this part, we need to set the visibility of the options container now to visible instead of collapsed, because there may be an instance where this is collapsed. And we need to set the visibility of the widget to visible, because now we're going to be using the widget. So I did a few other things, but basically I did them on event dispatchers, or I should say BPI, so I don't want to confuse you too much, but on each of your options here, for your on-clicked, you're going to do something like get player controller. And again, I have mine in multiple different places, and it actually communicates with the HUD element. So when I get owner, the HUD is assigned to the owner, and then I have a BPI inside of the HUD, which I'll just show that since this is going to confuse you anyway. So here's my example project, and this is where I use this BPI and this owner. This owner is a widget, and that widget is the HUD. So if I open up my gameplay HUD here, we see we have this big stack of widgets. And we use a blueprint interface to basically control all of the different things that happen inside of these widgets. So when I return option selection, we run a switch based on what we are doing inside of here. So if we are quitting the game, we take this selected option and we run logic. We either return to play mode or we don't return to play mode, right? We do all of this different stuff based on which option is coming in, and we do all of that on a BPI because we also have a battle HUD. This battle HUD has the same select options box inside of it. So when I select a move from the select options box, as you can see I haven't built it out, but when I select a move, this is what's going to run inside of that select options box. I don't have to cast into two different widgets and try to figure out where this options box is. This options box is going to be relevant to all of my HUD elements. So that's something to keep in mind there. I didn't want to go too much into detail, otherwise we're going to be here all day making these blueprint interfaces. If you want a video where we make the blueprint interfaces, we can go ahead and do that in another weekly episode. I wouldn't mind. I just wanted to keep this kind of simple. But basically, when you click the button, you're just going to return the selection type and the selected option of the button. So button 0 is going to be option 0. Button 1 is going to be option 1. Button 2 is going to be option 2. Button 3 is going to be option 3. In our exact project, we did, option 1, 2, 3, and 4 with the text being weird. That's just something you're going to have to decide again for yourself how you want to handle that. I did 0 based in my project, but this one, I guess I just kind of spaced and forgot. But that is all that is happening in here. So, how are we going to use this? Well, just like we did before, I believe we just kind of cheesed this in our third-person blueprint. We did. So instead of saying new text on 1, I am going to say set up options box. And this is going to be here and here. We're going to say display name of system. We're going to make one of these. The 0 is going to be no. 1's going to be yes. The message is going to be, do you want to quit? And then we don't actually need to set the visibility. We could set the visibility. We don't need to. Now, hopefully when I press 1, it's going to say, do you want to quit? If I shift F1, I can click this button, nothing happens. I can click my no button. I can click my yes button. And now if I come in here and I say new text instead, it should still bring up the dialog box like it was before. It's just going to be slightly smaller. So that's something you're going to have to keep in mind.
Power on. Optical in.
So yeah, and if you want to tool around with the cosmetics, you are free to do that. This is your project after all. It would be something like keeping this size box set to fill and this button next set to fill everything inside of this size box to fill out this vertical box. And then instead of using this, this options container would be basically the same as it is now. I think you would just wrap this with a vertical box as well, honestly. And you could dynamically set this to fill, or you could just set it to fill. I think that will actually work, though, just wrapping that and setting it to fill. Not quite. But I'm not going to get too deep into the cosmetics, right? We wanted the functionality here. So if we say the title is system, colon, now that's going to show up as system. And I did have it looking better in mine. I'm not really sure what I did. I think I ditched the size box, maybe. Replace with child. And then set this to fill. That might work. Hey, that worked. So let's see if that actually works with the options box. Compile, save that. And it does work with the options box. Let's say we have 4 options instead of 2, or 3 options. We'll say FA on the 2. Now when I press 1, we have FA down at the bottom. That's kind of nice. It's filling itself out as a bottom piece. And we have FSA as this last one. Now when I press play here and I press 1, we have all of the different options. So one little side note here, we may encounter an issue where if you're chaining options boxes, you may still have an option 2 and an option 3 that are set because we're doing this for each loop. So a slightly better way to do that might be to do a for loop. So instead of a for each loop, you would run a for loop running from 0 to 3, getting a copy of the options at the index, and setting the text based on that options index. So we would run this switch on int, which I should have just, run the switch on int here. So the same switch pretty much, and you would just get the option text at that index if it is valid. So you would say probably last index if this index is greater than the last index, to select a string where you would either select B for the 0 and A for empty. That way you're just kind of clearing these out if there is no option in there. But part of designing is figuring this stuff out for yourself as you go along when you have issues, so I will let you do that. Just a little tidbit here at the end that you're probably going to have to run something like this when you have multiple options boxes chaining together. Or you're going to have to run something at the end, like when you click this option 1, when you have this onClicked event at the end of this onClicked event, go ahead and get all of, or set all of these options boxes and set them all back to 0. When you're all done, so you would make a custom clear options, which I spelled the crap out of that wrong, where you just set all this stuff back to empty. But that's something to keep in mind. That's something you're going to have to edge case on your own. I will let you figure that out. So that is how we mod this dialog box into an options box. Hopefully you followed along here. Hopefully I didn't lose you anywhere. If you have any questions or comments, let me know in the comments section below, and we will try to get to those. And if you really do want a basically HUD stack like I'm doing in my example project here, which this tutorial series will be out eventually, it's pretty big. It is kind of like a almost RPG style battle system where it's a creature hunter game, so it's kind of Pokemon-ish in nature, which is why we have this selection box, these 4 options. We're going to be making a move set and doing all that good stuff in here. So this is a large tutorial. It won't be finished probably until June, honestly. But maybe I will just go ahead and parse out the options box section where we do the HUD elements and all that stuff. With the BPIs in here for you. If that is something you're interested in, let me know in the comments section below. Thanks for watching. See you later.